Antichrist and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations, he, Antichrist, shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, until the end of all things, in other words. And that determined, or that was poured upon the desolate, or the desolate one, meaning Antichrist. All right, now tonight, watch carefully. In a moment I'm going to come back and explain what we just read in these two verses in a very simple, very careful manner. But in order for you to fully understand the message on the second coming of Jesus Christ tonight, I want you to once again set up what I call God's calendar of events for the future. In other words, I'm going to ask that you draw an imaginary diagram using some things here on the platform. Again, we'll use the arrangement of flowers that we have facing here on the corners of the platform. We're going to let you use those as points of contact concerning what's going to take place in the future and in what order it will happen. This is God's calendar of events for the future. This is the idea. Now, again tonight, the two arrangement of flowers will represent the two parts of the second coming of Jesus Christ. The arrangement of flowers here on the side nearest the piano. This arrangement will represent the first part, or the first half, of the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is the second coming of Christ known as the rapture. The rapture, very simply, is the time when Jesus, one day, will step out into the heavens with a shout, the trumpet of God will sound, the voice of the archangel will be heard, and my Bible says at that instant time that every born-again Christian, whether they have already died or are still living on the earth at that particular point of time, will be caught up in a moment in the twinkling of an eye to meet the Lord in the air, and the Bible says, so shall we ever be with the Lord. Now the rapture is the next thing to take place on God's calendar of events for the future. And in a few moments you're going to see and understand that the rapture, thank God, could take place even tonight. It's that near. Now the rapture, the time when Jesus stepped out into the heavens of the spaces and he stopped. He does not come over down the earth. Christians who up in the air, in the spaces, go back to be with him in heaven. Draw your imaginary line from the first half of the second coming of Christ, known as the rapture, all the way across the platform. The idea of the time is going that direction. Draw your line to the second arrangement of flowers here, representing the second half of the second coming, known as the revelation. Now, the revelation of Jesus Christ is different from the rapture in this respect. At the revelation, Jesus comes riding upon a white horse. The Christians that went up to meet him at the rapture also come riding upon white horses. The armies of the angels come with him as well at that point of time. At the revelation of Jesus Christ, he comes riding upon a white horse all the way down to the earth. He does not stop in the spaces this time. That's the basic difference. But he comes all the way down to the earth. The first thing he does when he gets down to the earth is to fight the battle of Armageddon, that battle of the world against God, the battle of the blood that flows to the battles of the horses there in the flanks of Megiddo in Israel. Then, following the battle of Armageddon, he'll set up his throne in the city of Jerusalem and he'll restore the temple of Solomon. The judgment of the nations will take place. And the Jews at that time will also be brought back to the promised land of Abraham. From all over the world, they'll be brought back to the Middle East. And then, draw your line from the revelation of Jesus Christ, represented by the arrangement of flowers. From there, draw your line all the way to the wall. Because from that time forward, for 1,000 years, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, will rule this world as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and Prince of Peace. All right. Now, the period of time separating the rapture and the revelation, this imaginary line that you drew just a while ago, is known as Daniel's 70th week of prophecy. We call it more commonly the 7-year tribulation period. Now what? Hey, the 7-year tribulation period is divided into two sections of 3.5 years each, making up a total of 7 years. You say, why is there a two-point division, 3.5 years each for a total of 7? The answer is very simple. My Bible tells me that in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, 3.5 years after Jesus comes at the rapture, the man that God calls Antichrist, really a devil-possessed man, according to Revelation chapter 13, verse 2, Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. This devil-possessed man will go to the city of Jerusalem. He will enter into the temple that has been rebuilt at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period for the purpose of Jewish worship. And he will enter to the Holy of Holies of that temple, kick over the ark of the altar of God that's been reestablished, and set a statue or an image of himself, and demand that the world worship him as God. Now, when he does that, the Bible says, then shall there be great tribulation. For the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period will be the most horribly destructive period of time this world has ever known. But this man, Antichrist, in a moment I'm going to tell you about him. You're going to find out about him tonight. This man, Antichrist, will at the same time set up by force a one-world government system which will preach tomorrow night, the coming world government of Antichrist. At the same time, setting up by force a one-world church system which we can see forming today called the ecumenical movement, going to be made possible by that godless, charismatic movement. That's what's going to bring about a one-world church. All right, now watch this. Here's the whole idea of the message tonight. My Bible tells me that in the Middle East, and we're keeping everything confined to the Middle East tonight, in the Middle East there will be many unusual things that will actually happen during the 7-year tribulation period after Jesus comes to the rapture. And when these things happen, there will be a warning from God that it won't be long till Jesus comes to rule the world. But if we can see those things forming right now in our world to get us ready for the fulfillment during the 7-year tribulation period, if we can see those things forming right now, it's even more important to you and I because it means, thank God, that Jesus is soon coming. The rapture will have to take place 7 years before the revelation. And we know that that rapture is not very far away. I'm going to prove it to you tonight. All right, let's go back to Daniel chapter 9, and let me show you, first of all, one of the most amazing things that I've seen in a long time. Daniel chapter 9, notice carefully that Antichrist, in verse 27, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Now, the covenant that is confirmed by Antichrist, this man of sin, during the 7-year tribulation period, that covenant is an agreement, is the idea, to restore the Jewish worship practices. In other words, he allows the Jews to start worshiping in the temple again. He allows them to start practicing their worship with the sacrifices and the blood sprinkling on the altar and the whole thing. Now, how long does he set up that peace treaty? Really? At the very beginning, watch this, at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, right after Jesus comes, Antichrist, the man of sin, will make a 7-year peace treaty. He made the covenant for 1 week. He makes a 7-year peace treaty, settles the Middle East crisis. He solves, because of the unusual power that he has received from Satan, who now lives inside him. He is Satan-possessed, not just demon-possessed, but Satan-possessed personally. He has unusual power. He solves the energy crisis. He solves the financial crisis. He solves the food crisis as it could be solved, only up to that time in the best way he could, rather. He solves the Middle East problem. All right. He makes that 7-year peace treaty to protect the Jews from the rest of the world for 7 years. In that peace treaty is a clause that allows the Jews to start worshiping in their temple. When? It will all take place right after Jesus comes at the rapture, but I remind you, it cannot happen until immediately after. India and Russia overruns the countryside of Israel with their Arab armies, including and all the other armies of the world that are listed in chapter 38. When they overrun the countryside of Israel, God writes them out. God destroys them. Now wait a minute. The armies of Russia are not there, as it once did. The world armies are completely destroyed. If the Antichrist could lift the shoulders to come to the aid of Israel, that's the consequence of quickly. We don't know how that's possible, though. If the Antichrist could lift them through to come to the aid of Israel, God destroyed the armies of Russia and the world. And the Antichrist, that is just an idea. The number 2 world power has been destroyed. What's to hold him back from becoming a one world war? Red China is too far away. He can make his move now, and he can get in position before Red China could ever start to destroy. So here comes Antichrist in verse 31, not to help Israel, but to destroy them. To destroy the Jews and to set up a one world government system by force. Verse 41. He shall enter also into the glorious land. The word he is Antichrist. President also. If Russia entered in this 30, why would God say Russia also entered in this 41? That's those reasons why we know we're going to this 41 is Antichrist and not Russia. He shall enter also into the Lord's land, and new countries shall be overthrown. When Russia attacks the nation of Israel, they don't overthrow anybody. God wipes them out. The only one you read about in prophecy who says any overthrowing in the Middle East during the 7-year tribulation period is the man called Antichrist. It's got to be Antichrist. I'll cut all that because how is it says it's not? All right. Verse 42. Antichrist will suddenly come, not to help, but to rule, to destroy. Verse 42. He shall stretch forth his hand also from the countries surrounding Israel, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. Well, of course not. If you don't rule the world, you're going to control the Middle East. Notice verse 33. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Underline these two words, precious things. What's the most precious thing that Egypt has today? Oil. There's the energy crisis. The energy crisis that we have been in the grip of since October 1973 has been in the Bible all this time. It just didn't show up until the energy crisis started. Why is there going to be an energy crisis? Because the energy crisis that we have gone through has proven that if we are going to control the world, there's one way to do it, just simply control the oil. Because if you cut off the oil to a nation, you can destroy that nation with a short period of time. The oil blood conflict began in October 1973, when nations of our world being cut off. After 50 years, how powerful is an oil boycott, refusing to sell oil? You see, nations can't exist without oil. Everything we do is oil. The clothing you wear, most of the clothing that you wear in this room tonight has a chemical base of oil. Not just for the machine to make it, but you can't have the fiber. You can't have the polyester fiber without oil in it. It's got to have oil. That's called ethics. Did you know if you remove everything in your house that had oil as far as the chemical makeup of that particular item in your house, that you would take out everything in your house, including wallpaper? Everything that's not wood. Wood is the only thing that doesn't have oil as a base chemical in it in your house. That's the plastic, that's the appliances, that's everything. We need to rip the thing out the way. Whatever it is. Oil. We can't exist with a nation without oil. 6 years after that oil boycott began in October of 1973, the mighty nation called Japan that shipped over 90% of her oil, even greater than coal. As her oil from the Arab countries, we were cut off, and the leaders of Japan got on their knees and begged the Arab nations, please sell us our oil again. We're being scared. And the Arabs said, well, you'll be glad to sell you the oil. If we just change the foreign policy and simply play Israeli to follow us. And the Japanese leaders told the Arab leaders, they said, Israel food. Now, I guarantee you, we know anything about the Japanese nation because of World War II. Then, if you can bring Japan to its knees in 6 weeks, you've done something. Now, America down now. China is a man in the world of the 7-year tribulation period. He has brought about a one-world government system by force and makes everybody refuse the laws or the money or the knowledge of the day the world government system. How do they do it? Just cut off their oil if they don't agree with their own rules. What is also the Bible says in verse 43 that you have power or authority over the treasures of gold and silver. Did you know up until October 1973 that the treasures of gold and ivory were not in the Arab countries, but they were in the European countries? They had the treasures of gold and silver. Do you know who has most of the gold and silver today? The world. Just a few months after the World Boycott started, they told every nation in the world, including America, we will no longer let you buy oil from us with paper money, because we know that paper money is going to be destroyed. If you want gold so much, you're going to have to buy it. If you oil, you're going to have to buy it with gold or silver. Your gold, your silver. You wouldn't. The things happening in the news are not an accident. Every last one of them, they put it in the Bible, they say it's going to be like after Jesus comes to the rapture. So thank God we do that when we tribulation period starts. I'm going home to be with you before the rapture. If you're not saved, you better get saved. If you are saved, you better spread out to God as a Christian. You better set by the things of your way of living and quit arguing about it. You're still going to stand before Jesus. You better reach your lovers and friends and quit making excuses for not witnessing and winning souls. Quit being bad. Quit being good. God, what you're doing is good. You're doing good. Jesus is second. He is referring to the prince who shall come, that is mentioned in verse 26. That he is Antichrist. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, or literally not a week of days, but a week of years, or 7 years. For 1 week, and in the midst of the week, or in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations, he, Antichrist, shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, until the end of all things, in other words. And that determined, or that which is determined, shall be poured upon the desolate, or the desolate one, meaning Antichrist. All right, now tonight, watch quickly. In a moment, I'm going to come back and explain that we just read these 2 verses in a very simple, very careful manner. But in order for you to fully understand the message on the second coming of Jesus Christ tonight, I want you to once again set up what I call God's calendar of events for the future. In other words, I'm going to ask that you draw an imaginary diagram using some things here on the platform. Again, we'll use the arrangement of flowers that we have facing here on the corners of the platform. We're going to let you use those as points of contact concerning what's going to take place in the future and in what order it will happen. This is God's calendar of events for the future. This is the idea. Now, again tonight, the true arrangement of flowers will represent the 2 parts of the second coming of Jesus Christ. The arrangement of flowers here on the side nearest the piano. This arrangement will represent the first part, or the first half, of the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is the second coming of Christ known as the rapture. The rapture, very simply, is the time when Jesus, one day, will step out into the heavens with a shout, the trumpet of God will sound, the voice of the archangel will be heard, and my Bible says at that instant time that every born-again Christian, whether they have already died or are still living on earth at that particular point of time, will be caught up in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, to meet the Lord in the air, and the Bible says, so shall we ever be with the Lord. Now the rapture is the next thing to take place on God's calendar of events for the future. And in a few moments, you're going to see and understand that the rapture, thank God, could take place even tonight. It's that near. Now the rapture, the time when Jesus steps out into the heavens to the spaces and he stops. He does not come over down the earth. Christians who have to live in the air, in the spaces, go back to be with him in heaven. Draw an imaginary line from the first half of the second coming of Christ, known as the rapture, all the way across the platform. The idea of the time is going like direction. Draw your line to the second arrangement of flowers here, representing the second half of the second coming, known as the Revelation. Now, the revelation of Jesus Christ is different from the rapture in this respect. At the revelation, Jesus comes riding upon a white horse. The Christians that went up to meet him at the rapture also come riding upon white horses. The armies of the angels come with him as well at that point of time. At the revelation of Jesus Christ, he comes riding upon a white horse all the way down to the earth. He does not stop in the spaces this time. That's the basic difference. But he comes all the way down to the earth. The first thing he does when he gets down to the earth is to fight the battle of Armageddon. That battle of the world against God. The battle of his blood which flows through the bodies of the horses there in the plains of Megiddo in Israel. Then, following the battle of Armageddon, he'll set up his throne in the city of Jerusalem and restore the temple of Solomon. The judgment of the nations will take place. And the Jews at that time will also be brought back to the promised land of Abraham. From all over the world, they'll be brought back to the Middle East. And then, draw your line from the revelation of Jesus Christ, represented by the arrangement of flowers. From there, draw your line all the way to the wall. Because from that time forward, for 1,000 years, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, will rule this world as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and Prince of Peace. All right. Now, the period of time separating the rapture and the revelation, this imaginary line that you drew just a while ago, is known as Daniel's 70th week of prophecy. We call it more commonly the 7-year tribulation period. Now what? Wait. The 7-year tribulation period is divided into 2 sections of 3.5 years each, making up a total of 7 years. You say, why is there a two-point division, 3.5 years each for a total of 7? Well, the answer is very simple. My Bible tells me that in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, 3.5 years after Jesus comes at the rapture, the man that God calls Antichrist, really a devil-possessed man, according to Revelation chapter 13, verse 2, Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. This devil-possessed man will go to the city of Jerusalem. He will enter into the temple that has been rebuilt at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period for the purpose of Jewish worship. And he will enter to the Holy of Holies of that temple, kick over the ark of the altar of God that's been reestablished, and set a statue or an image of himself and the man that the world worshiping as God. Now, when he does that, the Bible says, then shall there be great tribulation. Or the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period will be the most horribly destructive period of time this world has ever known. But this man, Antichrist, in a moment I'm going to tell you about him. You're going to find out about him tonight. This man, Antichrist, will at the same time set up by force a one-world government system which will preach tomorrow night, the coming world government of Antichrist. At the same time setting up by force a one-world church system which we can see forming today called the ecumenical movement, going to be made possible by that godless charismatic movement. That's what's going to bring about a one-world church. All right. Now watch this. Here's the whole idea of the message tonight. My Bible tells me that in the Middle East, and we're keeping everything confined to the Middle East tonight, in the Middle East there will be many unusual things that will actually happen during the 7-year tribulation period after Jesus comes at the rapture. And when these things happen, they will be a warning from God that it won't be long till Jesus comes to rule the world. But if we can see those things forming right now in our world to get us ready for the fulfillment during the 7-year tribulation period, if we can see those things forming right now, it's even more important to you and I, because it means, thank God, that Jesus is soon coming. The rapture will have to take place 7 years before the revelation. And we know that that rapture is not very far away. I'm going to prove it to you tonight. All right, let's go back to Daniel chapter 9, and let me show you, first of all, one of the most amazing things that I've seen in a long time. Daniel chapter 9, notice carefully that Antichrist, in verse 27, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Now, the covenant that is confirmed by Antichrist, this man of sin, during the 7-year tribulation period, that covenant is an agreement, is the idea, to restore the Jewish worship practices. In other words, he allows the Jews to start worshiping in the temple again. He allows them to start practicing their worship with the sacrifices and the blood sprinkling on the altar and the whole thing. Now, how long does he set up that peace treaty? Literally, at the very beginning, watch this, at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, right after Jesus comes, Antichrist, the man of sin, will make a 7-year peace treaty. He made the covenant for 1 week. He makes a 7-year peace treaty, settles the Middle East crisis. He solves, because of the unusual power that he has received from Satan, who now lives inside him. He is Satan-possessed, not just demon-possessed, but Satan-possessed personally. He has unusual power. He solves the energy crisis. He solves the financial crisis. He solves the food crisis, as it could be solved, only up to that time in the best way he could, rather. He solved the Middle East problem. All right. He makes that 7-year peace treaty to protect the Jews from the rest of the world for 7 years. In that peace treaty is a clause that allows the Jews to start worshiping in their temple. When? It will all take place right after Jesus comes at the rapture. But I remind you, it cannot happen until immediately after Jesus. It might be a matter of days, maybe even weeks, I don't know. But it will be a very it'll be a matter of hours that he will allow them to start doing it. All right. Now what? He confirms the covenant with many, or with the Jews, for 7 years. But then notice, in verse 27 it says, and in the midst of the week, or in the midst of the covenant, of the peace treaty for 7 years, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. For he stops the Jewish worship after 3.5 years. How does he do it? He's out, very simply, he goes in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period, 3.5 years after the Jews start worshiping in that temple, he goes to Jerusalem, enters into that temple, that the statue, and ends up himself in the Holy of Holies, and demands that the Lord worship him as God, and then he becomes the abominable one that makes desolate. He becomes Antichrist, that man that destroys. And from that time forward, for the last 3.5 years, the Bible says, then shall there be great tribulation. Now what? I want to show you something that I have had to change in my preaching. And I've only had to change it in the last few months. Like most preachers, I have preached that at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, the Jews would worship in a temple. Right after Jesus comes, they'll start worshiping in a temple. Now, it's quite obvious that if after Jesus comes at the rapture and takes all saved people home to be with him, and the Jews are going to worship in a temple, then it's quite obvious that a temple is going to have to be built. Because they couldn't worship in one unless it was. I have preached, like most preachers, that the temple the Jews would rebuild at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period would be Solomon's temple. I no longer believe that. Now, I'll show you why. You can look later for yourself in some portions. We don't have time to turn to everything. But later you can read Isaiah chapter 43, 44, and 45. But here's the one particular place that even spells it out, letter perfect, so there'll be no question about it. Will Solomon's temple be the temple the Jews will rebuild at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period? The temple that Antichrist will enter into in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period and set up an image of himself. Will that be the temple? No, I don't believe so. Look, if you will, Zechariah chapter 6. Keep your place in Daniel chapter 9. We're coming right back there. Zechariah chapter 6. What temple will the Jews worship in at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period for 3.5 years? Look, if you will, in verse 12 of Zechariah chapter 6. Verse 12, and speak unto him, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, the man whose name is the branch. And who is the branch in the Scriptures? The Lord Jesus Christ. The man whose name is the branch, and he, the branch, shall grow up out of his place, and he, on the line of the next page, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Verse 13, it goes on. It carries the same idea until the twin. Even he, who, the branch, shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and he shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. He is King of kings, Lord of lords, and Prince of peace. Now, the point I want to make to you is simply this. Apparently, Solomon's temple is not going to be the temple that the Jews will worship in the first 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period, that Antichrist enters to in the middle of the 7-year tribulation period. But apparently, Solomon's temple is not going to be rebuilt until Jesus comes at the revelation to rule the earth for 1,000 years. He'll rebuild it when he comes to sit upon that throne, and he does not come to sit upon the throne until the revelation. All right, question, which is quite obvious. If Solomon's temple is not going to be rebuilt for the purpose of Jewish worship at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, then what temple will the Jews worship in? Listen to this. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Jerusalem, and I saw with my own eyes something I'd heard about, wasn't quite sure about, just to be honest. Do you know that right now the Jews are in the process of building a temple? It is already started. They broke ground for it in the spring of 1975. They started the actual building of it in June of 1975. I saw that thing, took pictures of it, have pictures of it right now. But that temple that the Jews are building right now is called Jerusalem Great Synagogue. It is a staggering thing in the respect that it is being designed exactly on the interior as Solomon's temple. It will have the sanctuary, it will have in the outer court the brazen altar for the sacrifices and for the burning of the meat and so forth. It will have inside the candlesticks, the whole thing, the labor out beyond the brazen altar. It will have inside it the sanctuary, and from there on in into the Holy of Holies and the Ark of the Covenant. It will be, the Jews are calling it right now, they are calling it the temporary temple. Jewish rabbis, this thing is being built in Jerusalem, not in the old city. It's about a mile from the temple, as we know it today, the original temple site. But it's still on the same mountain. And this temple that is being built is going to be the temporary temple until Solomon's temple can be rebuilt. It's next door to the chief seat of the rabbinate. If you ever get into Jerusalem, go look at it. You can see the thing going up right now. Hey, watch it. Here's the staggering thing about the whole idea. The rabbis are saying we can no longer wait for a temple. We've got to have a temple right now. We can't wait until the Mosque of Omar, the Dome of the Rock, is removed so we can build our temple. We've got to do it now. We've got to have a place to worship God. And they started it. When I saw that temple in just a few weeks ago in Jerusalem, it was 1/3 finished. Do you know the projected date for the finishing of that temple? The Jewish leaders are stating that they hope to have that temple completed and actually be worshiping in the temple before the end of 1976. I remind you, my Bible says the Jews cannot worship in a temple until after Jesus comes at the rapture. But they're getting ready for it right now. You hear me? When I saw that thing, I stood there, I got chill bumps. I couldn't hardly believe it. Here is a temple that is already in the process of being established. They say it'll be finished before the end of this year, and we'll be worshiping in it. Now what? If that is going to be the temple, I personally believe it will be. The temple the Jews will use for the first 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period. If that is going to be the temple, the one that God talks about in the Bible in the tribulation period, then it can only mean one thing. If they're getting ready to worship in it, and they plan to worship in it before the end of this year, it can only mean, thank God, Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. Listen to me. This temple, this is the one, apparently, that Antichrist will defile. The one that he will enter into, and that he will make desolate. Look back, if you will, in Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9. Let me tell you about this man, Antichrist, who is going to defile the temple that the Jews will be worshiping during the 7-year tribulation period. Daniel chapter 9. My Bible said in verse 27 that he allows the Jews, he makes a 7-year peace treaty to protect them from the rest of the world, solves the Middle East crisis, the problems of the world. He then also allows them to vow for, he said, I give you a 7-year agreement that you're going to worship in your temple. Now, after 3.5 years in the midst of the week, he breaks his own agreement. He goes in, stops the Jewish worship, stops the sacrifices, and literally sets a statue and image up of himself in the Holy of Holies and demands that the world worship him as God. Who is this man? This man that God calls Antichrist. There are only 4 major characteristics that Antichrist will have to have. Who's this, Jimmy? Today there's an awful lot of speculation. I believe with all my heart that we've got a lot of confusion because people are trying to put too many characteristics with Antichrist. Do you know what Antichrist is in the total picture? The man that will become Antichrist, called by God, that name. He will be a false Christ, a false Messiah. You see, Satan is a counterfeiter. That's why we've got so much religion in our world today, because he wants to counterfeit the true gospel. And that's why we end up with filthy, dirty, godless books called the Living Bible, and books called the Good News for Modern Man. You say, you don't like those things. No, I don't. Because they're not Bibles. They're filthy, dirty perversions that the devil is using to get people away from the Bible. And we don't need them. He's a counterfeiter. All right. He is going to counterfeit Christ. So much so that the 15.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period, many of the Jews begin to wonder if this guy might not be Messiah. They think that world peace has started. And the only world peace that the Jews know anything about is when Messiah, the Prince of Peace, comes. And so they begin to wonder, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the one. Okay. Now, there are only 4 major characteristics that Antichrist will have to have. There's only 4. Some people try to say there's more. Here's why they do. They forget one simple fact, that Antichrist is a type of the real Christ, an imitation of the real thing. That's what a type is, an imitation. Okay? A picture of the real thing. All right, a lot. Antichrist is a false type. And what most people forget is that all types break down. In other words, you cannot carry a type to its furthest extreme. A type is imperfect. See, I don't understand what you're saying. Okay, you will now. Joseph, in the Bible, is the most perfect type of Christ that we know anything about. In other words, many things that Joseph was and did is exactly what Jesus would be and would do when he came. He was a type of Christ. Isaac was a type of Christ, dying on the cross, yielding himself, submitting to the Father's hand. Okay? So, many types of Christ. Joseph was the most perfect, though, that we have in the Bible. It gives us a picture of what Jesus would be like when he came. But Joseph is not a perfect type. There's no such thing as a perfect type. Number 1, Joseph sinned. Did Jesus ever sin? No. So the type breaks down right there. Number 2, Joseph was married. Was Jesus married? Of course not. So the type breaks down there again. Joseph, so many different things. I'm not doing anything on it. But you're getting the idea. So what am I saying? There are only 4 major types that Antichrist, characteristics that Antichrist will have to have. What are they? Number 1, Antichrist, according to Daniel chapter 9 and verse 26, will have to be, this is the second one. Hold off on that one. The Antichrist, first of all, will have to be a Jew. He'll have to be a Jew. We only say, according to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 3, at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, when this man brings peace to the Middle East, the world says peace and safety, or world peace has begun. The Jews know the only one who can really do that is Messiah. And after they watch the miracles that he performs the first 3.5 years, begin to even wonder if this guy might be Messiah. Now, the Jews would never even begin to think that Antichrist might be Messiah unless, number 1, he was a Jew. Because the real Messiah was a Jew. You can't lose that type. Messiah would come through the Jewish people. So they would never consider him as a possible Messiah unless he was Jewish. That's the first thing. Number 2, according to Daniel chapter 9 and verse 26, Antichrist, this man, will be a man who is born in one of the old Roman Empire countries. Now, the old Roman Empire is made up primarily of what we call the European countries today. He is the prince of the people that shall come and destroy this city. He is the prince of the people that will come and destroy Jerusalem and the temple. Well, he destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. The Roman Empire did. So, he is the prince. Or in other words, he has to be a man born in one of the old Roman Empire countries, or his origin must be traced back to the old Roman Empire. In other words, he has to be born in one of the European countries as we know it today. So, first of all, Antichrist has got to be a Jew. Secondly, he's got to be born in one of the European countries. Thirdly, Antichrist, according to the Bible, will be a little horn, according to Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, verse 24. Antichrist is a little horn. A horn in Bible prophecy, according to verse 24 in chapter 7, is a king. Now, we don't call them kings so much anymore today. We call them leaders of countries, president, prime ministers, premiers. And if you want one word for everybody, we would call them politicians. All right? So a horn is a politician. But notice, my Bible said that Antichrist will be a little horn, verse 8 of chapter 7 in Daniel. A little horn, or a little politician, which simply means that he is not the head of a country, but he is a politician within a country of the world. Okay, so the third characteristic is a little horn. Number 4, Antichrist, according to Daniel chapter 9 and verse 27, will become known as the hope of the world for peace. He will become known as a world peacemaker. This is the man, the world peacemaker. Hey, 4 characteristics. Number 1, he's got to be a Jew. Number 2, he's got to be born in Europe. Number 3, he's got to be a little politician. Number 4, he's got to be known as the hope of the world for peace. For what it's worth, there is a man in our world today that fits all 4 of those characteristics. That man's name is Dr. Henry Kissinger. Dr. Henry Kissinger is, number 1, a Jew. Dr. Kissinger, number 2, is European born. He's born in Germany. Number 3, Dr. Henry Kissinger is a politician in the United States of America. He's Secretary of State. He is not the head of the country, the President. He's Secretary of State. A little politician. Number 4, Dr. Henry Kissinger is right now being called the hope of the world for peace. Henry Kissinger is an unusual man. If you can't say anything else, you've got to agree with that. Henry Kissinger is the only man interested enough in the Middle East situation that anybody will even listen to. Hey, he's the only man the Arabs and the Jews both will listen to. That's staggering because he's a Jew himself. And Arabs hate Jews. They want nothing to do with them. But yet, they want Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger has been called a miracle worker by Anwar Sadat. Golda Meir stated that Henry Kissinger was the only man the Jews so believed in that if he said the way to have peace in the Middle East was for the Jews to go through the Sinai Peninsula, get down to the Suez Canal, and cross the Suez Canal on dry ground, they believed that the Suez Canal waters would literally step aside if Henry Kissinger started to walk across. Henry Kissinger, an unusual man. For what it's worth, Henry Kissinger's mother calls him the Prince of Peace. Henry Kissinger, when he got married 2 years ago, Henry Kissinger literally demanded that all reference to the name of God be completely taken out of the wedding ceremony. He's a filthy, godless, blasphemous man. My Bible says Antichrist will be a blasphemous man. Henry Kissinger, for what it's worth, on August the 12th, 1975, I quote his own words, he staggered a lot of people. He's got a temper. He's got a rule. He's in Haifa. He is a man who is the head of a religious organization that is quietly, silently, is making hundreds of thousands and even millions of converts around the world. He's the head of a religious group called the High Faith. He's in it. If you run around the white room and see the head, he's got the same characteristics. Now, the only difference is, he is not the man that is working to make peace settlement in the Middle East, Henry Kissinger is. You say this, Henry Kissinger's got to do it. You can't say that. You know why? Because my Bible tells me in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, my Bible tells me that Antichrist will not be revealed until after Jesus comes. The man who will literally become Antichrist, he will not be revealed in that position until after Jesus comes. And just for what it's worth, I'm going to go home and be with Jesus before he's revealed. I can still love Jesus. For the purpose of Jewish worship for the first 3.5 years in the next 2 points is very deep, is very important. My Bible teaches me in Ezekiel 38 and 39, the 7th point, that Russia one day is going to attack the nation of Israel. Now tonight I don't have time to go into the particulars of how to do it and all this and the other. That's in our message called the Russian Bible Prophecy of the 11th to 12th page. We'll look at this up. Tonight I answer one question simply. When will Russia attack the nation of Israel? We know they're going to do it. When will they do it? This is verse 8. We're going to underline it for the page. Let me show you when Russia is going to attack Israel. Verse 8. And after many days, thou shalt be visited. That's what's concerning Russia. In the latter years, that's the phrase I want to underline. In the latter years, thou shalt come into the land and is brought back to the fold and is gathered out of many people. So, against the mountains of Israel, which have always been raised. My Bible says in verse 8 that Russia one day is going to attack the nation of Israel, and they're going to do it in the latter years. What does the phrase latter years mean? That's it. Every time you see the phrase latter years in Bible prophecy, it is always referring to the 7-year tribulation period. So the first conclusion we can come to is simply that Russia cannot attack the nation of Israel until sometime during the 7-year tribulation period. Hey, I remind you, October 1973, Russia came that close to attacking the nation of Israel. When the Yom Kippur War, he had her soldiers on the borders of Israel with the Syrian army, ready to march across for the first time since the involvement in the Middle East. And God used great permission to stop them at that time, and they didn't do so. Why didn't Russia attack them? Because it wasn't time. God says Russia one day is going to attack, but they can't attack until he says so. Russia cannot attack the nation of Israel until sometime during the 7-year tribulation period. And yet, we saw how quickly it came in 1973. If Russia thought they could get away with it, they'd attack Israel tomorrow. That's what the rules of Christian is today. Okay, but you say people, the 7-year tribulation period is pretty bad period of time, so we come down a little closer. Yes, as a matter of fact, we can. Look at verse 15, if you will. Verse 15. Thou, Russia, shall come from thy place out of the north part, north of Israel. Thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company, and a mighty army. God says in verse 15 simply that when Russia does attack the nation of Israel, they're going to do it on horseback. Now, it's very interesting to me that God says to do it on horseback, because Russia, if you realize it or not, Russia has 70% of all the horse flesh known to exist in the world. They've got it. Russia right now has the largest cavalry known to exist in the world. Oh, I had the privilege of seeing some of the Russian horses just a few weeks ago in Moscow. We spent 3 days there. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was spectacular horsemanship, terrific. We heard of their cavalry because it was Cossack. We heard it. Hey, God says that when Russia does attack the nation of Israel in the latter years, they're going to come on horseback. Now, there's several good reasons for that, because a horse can move faster than a man can. A horse can go places where a tank and a truck cannot go. A horse cannot be detected by radar. We've known all of that. But now, because of the last 2.5 years, we also understand one major reason for using horses instead of tanks and trucks. Because it does not take as much gasoline to run a horse as it does a truck. You know. And gasoline is not that plentiful right now. We'll be here. Okay? Watch carefully. Verse 16. And the Russia attack the nation of Israel. Verse 15. And thou shalt come up against my people of Israel as a cloud to cover the land. There be some new legends God says. Underline the next phrase. It shall be in the latter days. It shall be in the latter days. Now, my Bible says that Russia will attack Israel in the latter days. You say, hey, that's a contradiction. Verse 8 said latter years. Verse 16 says latter days. That's a contradiction if I've ever seen one. Well, that's the only problem. You've never seen one. Because there aren't any contradictions in the Bible. You say, well, how can you get that? How can you talking about opening today, that Jesus battle called the battle of Armageddon that will take place when Jesus comes with the revelation. That's when Russia will attack Israel. The latter days of the latter years. Right? Wrong. That's not right. It is Saturday, paradox. Because the battle of Armageddon is the battle of the world against God. That's not when Russia attacks Israel. This is not 175. There are two sections of 3.5 years each to make up a total of 7 years. Now, I prove to you that Russia will attack the nation of Israel the last 2 days of the first 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period. Look at verse 11. Verse 11. Thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, unprotected villages. I will go to them, thou art at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. Now, verse 11 is a beautiful description of peacetime. My Bible simply says that Russia is going to attack the nation of Israel when Israel is at peace. Israel is not going to be at peace the last 2.5 years. Antichrist is going to put a cross on their head and try to get over the last one of them killed and do it for peace. I wouldn't think they doesn't do it. But when Israel is peace, that's when Russia is going to attack. You know what it is? Oh, the first 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period. The first 3.5 years, Antichrist, that man of God made a 7-year peace treaty to protect them from the rest of the world, fight the middle of crisis. They settle down, and after a while it becomes something that they think is the millennium. The 1,000-year Messiah. And they take down their guards, they lower their weapons, they take down their fortifications, they put away their weapons. They can even get food take down. Food and food. And that's when Russia attacks. Russia will attack Israel apparently 3.5 years. The last 2 days of that first 3.5 years, 3.5 years after Jesus comes to the rapture. But they'd like to do it right now. Now, I'll show you the whole battle, show you the whole picture. Turn to Daniel, we have chapter 9, turn to chapter 11. Here's the last place we come. That's it, I'm going to paint one great, beautiful picture. All the next one. Now, before we begin reading verse 30 of Daniel chapter 11, I must first explain one word. Everybody look up here. Do you know what I mean when I use the word ally? Do you know what an ally is? In the technical sense of that word, it means a friend. So nations that are allies with each other are nations that are friends with each other. Nations that help each other, that look out for each other, that protect each other. Now, at the very beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, when Antichrist, the man of sin, makes that 7-year peace treaty to protect the Jews from the rest of the world, Antichrist becomes the Jews' protector. He becomes their ally. So anybody who attacks Israel has attacked Antichrist. Why? Because he is their ally. Here's the reason they've taken down their borders, their guards, rather. Taken down their fortifications, because they know he's powerful enough. The Bible says he shall make war against them. And so nobody believes anybody would ever try to attack. Not as long as he's their protector. All right. With that in mind, verse 30 will now make sense. Look at verse 30. And at the time of the end, or during the 7-year tribulation period, shall the king of the south, around the first king of the south, that's Egypt, and the Arab nation, the United Arab Republic. At the time of the end, shall the king of the south, Egypt, and the Arab nation, shall the king of the south praise at him. Underline the word him. The word him is not talking about Israel, it's talking about Antichrist. Now, Antichrist will have his offices in Europe. Apparently, it will be in Brussels, even if we know it today. Even the head, apparently, of the European Common Market, the first 3.5 years of the tribulation period. I'll tell you more about that tomorrow night. But Antichrist, his offices will be in Europe. My Bible says that Egypt will suddenly attack Antichrist. You say, how? By going over and attacking in Brussels? No, Because Antichrist is their protector. Whenever they attack Israel, they attack Antichrist as well. You see, the prophecy from verse 36 in chapter 11, all the way down through verse 45, is dealing with Antichrist and everything that he has to do in the 70 tribulation period. Okay? So, verse 40 again, and at the time of the end, during the 70 tribulation period, shall the king of the past, Egypt and the world nations, push off Antichrist, or attack Antichrist, how? By attacking the nation of Israel. And the king of the Lord, here comes, see the picture of him? The king of the Lord, here comes Russia. The king of the Lord shall come against him, who? Antichrist. How? By attacking the nation of Israel at the same time the Arabs do. The king of the Lord shall come against Antichrist by attacking Israel. Notice how it comes. Like a whirlwind, or like a tornado, without warning, suddenly he attacks. Yeah, I guess it is in a sudden attack, because we found out in Ezekiel 38:11 that he's going to do it too. Now, who do you think anybody would attack a nation that is totally free? Like a tornado, like a whirlwind, suddenly without warning, Russia and the other nations attack together. Okay, read on. Notice that Russia comes against Antichrist by attacking Israel like a whirlwind. Russia comes with slaves and with horsemen, yes, the largest cavalry navy ship in the world, and with new ships. April 1972, Russia became the largest navy ship in our world, and most of her naval fleet just happens to be stationed in the Mediterranean, fishing back the coast of Israel to this very night, just waiting the time to attack. This new ship. Read on, verse 40. And he, Russia, shall enter into the countries, the surrounding countries that are around Israel, as well as the nation of Israel, and shall overflow and pass over or overrun the countryside of Israel. Okay, let me just say that. Now you just say that. You just confused. Stay with me. Watch this. What do we just read? This is what he's saying here. At the beginning of the 70 tribulation period, Antichrist will become the head of the league of 27 nations and down this prophecy, the European Commonwealth. He brings peace to the Middle East and to the world, peace and safety to the world affairs. He solves one problem after another through the genius and power of Satan. But then suddenly, without warning, towards the latter part of the first 3.5 years of the 70 tribulation period, an attack is made on Israel. Antichrist, the whole 3.5 years, wants to be world ruler. But for the first 3.5 years, he hesitates. You know why? Because when Antichrist becomes the head of that European nation, the European Commonwealth, at the beginning of the 70 tribulation period, he will become the most powerful government system in the world. It will be the number one world power. The number 2 world power at that time will be Russia, according to the Bible. The number 3 world power at that time will be Red China, according to the Bible. And smaller nations of the world on down the line will be figured after those three. You can read it. Here's America. I got America's number 1. Oh, I'll tell you that tomorrow night. Weekend tomorrow night. Tune in. Same place, same time, same station, right here. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take my word for it. America. America will not be the number 1 world power. Russia will be number 2. Okay. For the first 3.5 years, Antichrist and his 10 legion nations would love to be world ruler, have a one world government system. We could say that the number 2 world power, Russia. Russia's a little bit too strong for him. Red China's not that big a deal because it's too far away and they're not quite as advanced scientifically and repressions and so forth as Russia is. And so he hesitates. But suddenly, without warning, towards the end of the first 3.5 years, Russia and the world nations attacked Israel. They have decided the time has come for them to become the rulers of the world. And you see the world is ready right now, as well as Russia. So here it is. They attack and suddenly, without warning, they overrun the countryside of Israel. What happens then? In the mind, you have to go back to Ezekiel 38 and 39. Don't go now. In those 2 chapters, we have a perfect description of what the battle will be like when Russia does attack. Literally, when Russia overruns the countryside of Israel with their Arab armies included and all the other armies of the world that are listed in chapter 38, when they overrun the countryside of Israel, God wipes them out. God destroys them. Now, wait a minute. Russia now. The Eurozone is a completely story. If the Antichrist could lift the finger to come to the aid of Israel, that's the tax took place so quickly. We don't understand how that's possible today. If the Antichrist could lift one finger to come to the aid of Israel, God destroyed the armies of Western Europe. But the Antichrist, suddenly gets an idea. The number 2 world power has been destroyed. What's to hold him back from becoming a one world war? Red China's too far away. He can make his move now, and he can get in position before Red China could ever start to destroy. So here comes Antichrist in verse 31, not to help Israel, but to destroy them. To destroy the Jews and to set up a one world government system by force. Verse 31. He shall enter also into the glorious land. The word he is Antichrist. Number 1, because of the context. In verse 36, down through verse 35. It's all concerning Antichrist. Another reason later he is Antichrist and not Russia is because of the word also. If Russia entered in verse 30, why would God say Russia also entered in verse 41? A third reason why we know the word he in verse 41 is Antichrist and not Russia. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and new countries shall be overthrown. When Russia attacks the nation of Israel, they don't overthrow anybody. God wipes them out. The only one you read about in prophecy that does any overthrowing in the Middle East during the 7-year tribulation period is the man called Antichrist. It's got to be Antichrist. I said all that because Hal Lindsey says it's not. All right. Verse 42. Antichrist will suddenly come, not to help, but to rule, to destroy. Verse 42, he shall stretch forth his hand also from the countries surrounding Israel, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. Well, of course not. If you don't rule the world, you want to control it. You need to read. Notice verse 33, and but he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Underline these 2 words, precious things. What's the most precious thing that Egypt has today? Oil. There's the energy crisis. The energy crisis that we have been in the grip of since October 1973 has been in the Bible all this time. It just didn't show up until the energy crisis started. Why is there going to be an energy crisis? Because the energy crisis that we have gone through has proven that if we are going to control the world, there's one way to do it, just simply control the oil. Because if you cut off the oil to a nation, you can destroy that nation with a short period of time. The oil broke out at the Channel October of 1973, in nations of our world being cut off. After 6 years, how powerful is an oil boycott, refusing to sell oil? If your nation can't exist without oil, everything you do is oil. The clothing you wear, most of the clothing that you wear in this room tonight has a chemical base of oil. Not just for the machine to make it, but you can't have the fiber. You can't have the polyester fiber without oil in it. It's got to have oil. That's part of it. Did you know if you remove everything in your house that had oil as far as the chemical makeup of that particular item in your house, that you would take out everything in your house, including wallpaper? Everything that's not wood. Wood is the only thing that doesn't have oil as a base chemical in it in your house. That's the plastic, that's the appliances, that's everything. We need to rip the thing off the oil. Whatever it is. Oh, we can't exist as a nation without oil. 6 years after that oil boycott began in October of 1973, the mighty nation called Japan that shipped over 90% of her oil, even greater than sold. As her oil from the Arab countries, she was cut off, and the leaders of Japan got on their knees and begged the Arab nations, please sell us our oil again. We're being scared. And the Arabs said, well, we'll be glad to sell you the oil. If we just change your foreign policy and simply praise lowly to full oil. And the Japanese leaders told the Arab leaders, they said, here's your food. Now, I guarantee you, we know a little bit about the Japanese nation because of World War II. So they told every nation in the world, including America, we will no longer let you buy oil from us with paper money, because we know that paper money is going to be destroyed. If you want gold from us, you're going to have to buy it with silver oil. You're going to have to buy it with gold or silver. Your gold or silver. We will. The things happening in the Middle East are not an accident. Every last one of them, they recorded in the Bible, they said it's going to be like after Jesus comes to the rapture. So thank God we do that when we tribulation period starts. I'm going home to be with you at the rapture. If you're not saved, you better get saved. If you are saved, you better start out to God as a Christian. You better set Bible standards as your way of living and keep arguing about it for sins and the sins of their Jesus. You better reach your love with your friends and quit making excuses for not witnessing and winning souls, quit being bad, quit being good. God, what you're doing, you better do it.
Please like, comment, and subscribe.